Israel's troubled waters could soon be calmer in the north. For the first time in decades, Lebanon and Israel, enemy countries, still technically at war, will soon meet to discuss resolving a civilian issue of a disputed maritime border. A delegation from Israel will soon cross over the border into Lebanon for direct talks. We're talking about a 330 square mile patch of Mediterranean Sea that both nations claim to be within their exclusive economic zones, and it could be very important economically to develop this area for both countries. With us now is I-24 News Middle East correspondent Emily Rose with a major update for us on how these talks will proceed. Emily, what can you tell us?
Well, Jeff, yes, indeed, it is a historic action here happening today. Actually, tomorrow will be the first time these talks are launched. And now a senior source within the Israeli Energy Ministry is revealing more. So according to this source, this scenario could play out in two separate, well, let's say scenarios. On one hand, he estimates that what could happen is that the Lebanese delegation is open to these talks. They're ready to proceed. They're serious about the practical implications. And within just a few months, they could start reaping the benefit of that offshore gas exploration. On the other hand, he said that if they're met with more opposition by the Lebanese counterparts, this could take years to resolve and won't move forward any further. Now, according to the senior source, there are very specific guidelines and achievements here on the line. He stressed that these aren't peace talks. They aren't efforts for normalization between Israel and Lebanon. No, these are very specific goals. They just want to figure out what are those demarcation lines, what belongs to Lebanon, what belongs to Israel in terms of being allowed to explore for natural gas, and thus setting achievable goals in these negotiations he hopes will lead to actual practical implications for Lebanon. Let's remember that Lebanon is heavily reliant upon petrol for its energy, which is very expensive. And it really does need to start exploring for natural gas off the shore. So for Lebanon, this is actually crucial. Now, for Israel, it's another story. Israel actually exports natural gas. It doesn't really need it. But this senior source stressed that Lebanon really is in dire need, does need to get some progress made on these talks, and thus really will or should be more interested in having these practical implications come to fruition and being able to explore for natural gas and have these talks actually do lead to practical results, financial results for Lebanon.
Yeah, Emily, this is very valuable real estate, or should I say seawater instead. As you mentioned, developing this for natural gas exploration could be very valuable for both countries. Is this a breakthrough, though? I mean, could this lead to further talks to resolve the war, to resolve other conflicts? Or do you think this is going to still end up being a very narrowly focused issue and it won't lead to anything else?
Well, that's exactly what the senior source stressed. He said that this is not an attempt to secure normalization between Israel and Lebanon. It's not paving the pathway to peace in terms of peace talks between Israel and Lebanon. He just wanted to stress that this is paving a pathway to resolving the demarcation lines in the maritime dispute. Those are the goals on the line here. He stated that by setting those achievable goals, he hopes to find achievable results. And so that's why this, as he stressed, is seen by at least the Israeli party, by the Israeli ministry, as just these limited achievable goals, just working out these demarcation lines and trying to resolve that dispute. Now, others do hypothesize that perhaps that could lead to more talks in the future. We will really have to see how these talks go, how they unfold, and what the Lebanese side is willing to put forward. But for now, it looks as though the Israeli delegation, at least, is going in with very limited goals, with very limited aspirations, and thus they hope for achievable results.
Emily, thank you so much for that update.